everyone and welcome to my channel. It's been about 3 years since I've done anything on this channel, but I'm glad to bring you something different and something new. This is Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, and we're in the Philippines because the community for Flight Simulator 2020 is incredible, and there are some great freeware and now payware sceneries available in the Philippines. This is why we're here in Mactan, Cebu International Airport. And yes, this is the proper, relatively up-to-date version, actually pretty much up-to-date with the new international terminal and the domestic terminal, which is the original terminal. Now, why are we doing this and why are we in the Philippines? Now, Philippines and aviation for my life are very linked. Being half Filipino, I used to come to the Philippines all the time. And being from the UK, long flights, and my mum being how she is, we would always take the cheapest flight. So I've been on many different airlines going to and from the Philippines. And because my mum was from the island of Cebu, this is my gateway to the Philippines. Today's flight, we are flying on Cebu Pacific's A320NEO on a short hop across to the next island of Negros on Cebu Pacific's flight 126 to Bacolod, the city of smiles. Now, why am I doing this flight? Well, interestingly, only a few months ago I did this exact flight in this same type of aircraft, the A320NEO. So why not replicate it in the game with scenery on both ends? Should we head into the cockpit and get ourselves set up? We are setting up from cold and dark with ground power unit connected. So to set up cold and dark, the first thing we need to do, and it's already been done, is the external power unit has been set to on and the batteries are on. Now we're going to turn the ADIRs on so we can have navigation. This takes a few minutes, which allows us to do all the pre-flight checks and to set up our navigation for our flight. I'll turn the fuel pumps on now so we can start the APU. And the APU is now starting. While we're here, what I can do is put the emergency lights on and the no smoking and seatbelt signs go to on. While we wait for the APU to start, we can start with we can check our ATIS clearance for the weather and information.
Mactan Airport information, Echo 2300 Zulu. Wind 212 at 11. Visibility 6. Sky condition, few clouds at 3,300 feet. Temperature, tree. Dew point 10. QNH 29.85. Visual runway 22 in use. Landing and departing runway 22. VFR aircraft say direction of flight. All aircraft read back hold short instructions. Advise controller on initial contact you have Echo.
So we have information Echo, we have a QNH of 2985. Now we're going to ask for our IFR clearance for Bacolod.
Clearance delivery Cebu 126 ready to copy IFR clearance to Bacolod.
Cebu 126 is cleared to Bacolod Airport as filed. Takeoff runway 22 climb and maintain 6,000 feet. Departure frequency is 127.5 squawk 0116.
Cebu 126 cleared to Bacolod Airport as filed. Takeoff runway 22 climb and maintain 6,000 feet. Departure on 127.5 squawk 0116.
Cebu 126 read that correct. Contact ground on 121.8. Good day.
Okay, there we go. We've done our IFR clearance, we've checked the ATIS. Now, while we're setting up as well, I'm going to ask GSX, Ground Services Extreme, to start boarding the aircraft. Now the APU is also on, we can start the APU bleed, which will give us air conditioning. We can also turn off our external power while we're here, and then ask GSX also to remove the external power unit from outside.
Do you want to board crew? Passengers boarding starting.
Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to set up the MCDMU for this very short flight. It's a very easy setup for this flight. So here's what we're going to do. Go to initial. Our flight is 5 Juliet 126. Our cruise altitude will be 16,000 feet. And our cost index today on this very short flight will be 25. And then we're going to go to the next page. Our zero fuel weight. This is one of the things I love about this this aircraft, is that you can automatically put these in. We'll align the okay. We go to flight plan. Because I've already loaded this into from the flight simulator flight planner with the approach and the arrival, or should I say the departure from Bacolod, from here in Mactan, and the arrival into Bacolod, we are pretty much there. Performance page. So today's flight we will be flaps 1 for takeoff. That will give us, we have 121 for the V1, for the rotate 122, and for V2 126. So it'll be a very quick departure, which I experienced in real life, which is incredible, to be honest. So yeah, we can confirm block, and we have all of our weights now included. So we've got on board fuel of 5.6 tons, but we're only gonna burn 1.5, which means for the return leg back to Cebu there should only be the need not to, we shouldn't have the need to refuel in Bacolod, which is good. It means that our turnaround can be a bit quicker. So I'll leave it on performance actually I'll leave it on flight plan page, so that as soon as the IRs are aligned, we will start our check on the navigation display. Now this is what I like about this aircraft as well. Now I didn't mention it, but this is default A320NEO aircraft, which is included in Flight Simulator 2020. However, this is modded with fly-by-wire's A320X mod, which pretty much brings the standard much higher. Now, I'm not a real-world pilot. I cannot tell you exactly how this is, but from my experience on Flight Simulator and the previous Flight Simulator X using Aerosoft's Flight Simulator Airbus A320, which is, as far as I'm aware, very, very accurate to the real aircraft. Obviously not 100% accurate, but very accurate. This is close enough to it, which is why I'm quite familiar with systems. I'm quite familiar with setting up the aircraft. Now, the ND display is now active, now that we've got our inertial references aligned. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click this to flight plan, because I'm going to check the flight plan. Always important to check the flight plan. Now the beauty of this flight being so short, if there's any discontinuity in the flight plan, we can just clear it, because you see here there's a flight discontinuity here, as you can see on the MCDMU. I can zoom out and you can see there's a bit of a gap between Toby waypoint and this waypoint, Victor Bravo 21 Alpha. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clear that discontinuity in the MCDMU, and that should build a flight plan just there. Perfect. And at Toby it looks like we'll be doing our deceleration for the approach, which is perfect as well. So we're ready for our departure. We are just awaiting for our baggage to be completed. Now you can join me outside. We can have a look at the baggage process while we're here. And this is a thing I do like. This is a payware, but GSX, ground service is extreme. The animations are incredible. And when you're on a remote stand without a jet bridge, you also have walking passengers from buses. Now, in Bacolod, if I was flying the ATR, which I will probably do another flight possibly sometime in the future with the ATR aircraft, you'll see that I have customized one of the parking bays in Bacolod because to the real world, and I have also flown on both the ATR 72 with Cebu Pacific and Philippine Airlines Dash 8 between Cebu and Bacolod. So I'm very well versed in I guess real world operations in and around the Visayas area. Now we're just coming up to the last baggage now. APU is running and it looks like all of our passengers are on board. No problems with passengers today. It's a simulation after all. You won't get these sort of problems as we do in real life. And they're just waiting for the baggage handlers to complete their job, and it's important that we get all the bags on and that everyone can be reunited when we get to Bacolod. Now I'm going to jump back into the cockpit and I'm going to make an announcement to the passengers. Hello, good morning passengers, and welcome aboard this flight. This is your Cebu Pacific flight 126 to Bacolod. Flight time today will be approximately 25 minutes from wheels up to wheels down. And it looks like we have pretty good weather today. Maybe a few bumps over the mountains of Cebu, but other than that we should be alright for our flight. Now we're just waiting for the last of our bags to be loaded, and then we'll be hitting off the gate and pushing back. Thank you for your patience, and just enjoy the flight. We should be arriving on time today. Thank you. Okay, that's our announcement done, and we'll just do our final checks. There's not much else for us to do other than to be ready for our departure. Fuel pumps are on. We disengage that. I'm going to turn the because we're in a warm climate of 30 degrees. I'll turn the AC knobs down. I don't know if it actually makes a difference. I can double check. Oh, why are the throttles going a bit mental? Let me just hit that. Let's check flight controls, APU, air conditioner. Yeah, it's kind of making a difference. It's quite warm though. If the cockpit is 26 degrees C, I'll try to make it a bit colder, because ideally in these climates you want maybe 18 degrees. Okay, it looks like boarding is complete. We just got our message from GSX. Let's turn off the air conditioner and then we'll get our doors closed. We'll just wait for the cargo door. They should close it automatically. This is one of the things I love about GSX as well. And then we'll continue with our departure. There we go, door is closing. Now I'm just trying to sort out the views. I'm not very good at the views still. I'll get back into the cockpit. There we go. Nope. Okay, so I have this, this is what I like about Flight Simulator as well, is that we've got these amazing extra views. I forgot also to mention, you might have noticed the Scoot aircraft, which in reality is in the wrong location because this is domestic terminal. Scoot is a Singapore-based airline. I've also flown with them, and in that aircraft, the A320NEO, from here in Cebu to Singapore, 4-hour flight. And you can see there's Cebu Pacific A321. It looks like there's another A321 in the international terminal. Now, this is part of, again, another freeware. I love my freewares on Microsoft Flight Simulator. Now, let's complete our boarding, and we'll let GSX know that we're ready for pushback. Would you like pushback? Yes, I would. Like I say, I do like Flight Simulator 2020 for the freeware. There's a lot of freeware, and the freeware communities around the world seem to be very, very active, and I'm happy because me flying around the Philippines, I want to fly in the Philippines on regional and domestic flights. There are even a few Fifth Freedom flights that I might try.
Hello, Captain. We're ready for pushback.
Okay, there's our handler. So I'll let you guys enjoy this flight. I will be talking as much as I can, maybe about some of my experiences in aviation in the Philippines, and even some personal information. We'll just wait for our ground handler.
Bypass pin inserted.
And oh, this is another thing I forgot. We'll lock the cockpit door, which is standard protocol with most airlines, and it's completely locked. You heard that donk. Turn our beacon light on. That will allow everyone outside to know that we are going to be moving. I'll also, at this moment, I'm going to switch to the ground frequency.
Locking gear.
Now, one of the good things about the fly-by-wire A320 is also that you can have pushback on here as well if you don't have GSX, and the pushback is very good. You can even do it yourself, set it up yourself. Right, so we're going to push back to the left.
Release parking brakes.
Releasing parking brake.
Commencing push. All engines clear. Start at will.
Okay, engines are clear and we can start. Now, I'm not too sure with Cebu Pacific's procedure, but on this flight, as we are turning to the left, we will start engine 2 first. So, we'll start engine 2. Ah, and at this point I am in the passenger cabin, and you can hear the, this is Fly-by-Wire's own safety announcement. So we're expecting a runway 22 departure, so we'll be pushed back into the left. Oh, I love the sounds from the passenger view, and as being a passenger on the A320 and A320NEO, this is very, very realistic. Ah, the Emirates flight. Interestingly, I've flown with Emirates to Cebu. They have a Fifth Freedom flight on the Cebu leg, which goes from Dubai, Cebu, then to Clark, which is in Luzon, near Manila, and then back to Dubai. And the flight, although they don't have the right to carry passengers between Cebu and Clark, it's still there. And I believe, yeah, that is the Fifth Freedom of flight, but it doesn't allow them to carry. Oh no, it's not Fifth Freedom. I believe it's not the fifth, because the Fifth Freedom is when they can carry passengers between, but they can certainly fly the leg. Parking brake is set.
Waiting your confirmation for good engine start.
We've just had a good start on engine number 2, so we'll go outside, and you can we'll let you watch the engine start from outside as well. Now, it's amazing how quiet the Airbus A320neo is, especially compared to its predecessor with the smaller engines, the CEO, the current engine option. And the A321 and A320neo, which I'm starting to become more familiar with as they become more common around the world, amazingly quiet, especially for passengers. There we go, we got our engines really going up there. Sorry about the switching of the views like that. Now I'm going to call it's a bit early, but I'm going to still call GSX to confirm good start.
Cockpit to ground. We have a good engine start. You can disconnect.
We're pretty much, engine 2 has already completely started. Okay, so now we can turn this knob back to normal. We can turn off the APU bleed and turn off the APU master, which will switch off the APU. Now we're going to call for our taxi clearance while the
McTan ground, Cebu 126 with Echo ready to taxi IFR.
Cebu 126 taxi to and hold short of runway 22 via taxiway.
Unlocking gear.
Bravo Charlie. Contact tower on 118.1 when ready.
Taxi to and hold short runway 22 via taxiway Foxtrot Delta Bravo Charlie Cebu 126.
Now what I'm going to do instead, it's asking me to go to taxiway Bravo and Charlie. I'm just going to skip out Bravo and Charlie because we don't need it. That will take us all the way to the end of the runway.
Ride is clear.
But what we're going to do instead is fly from taxiway Delta, which is basically down here to the right, straight to the runway, which is actually what I did on my flight back in May, on this exact route between Cebu and Bacolod. I mean, it's a very, very light flight, and I believe I've got the load just about right, with about 40 passengers. Now we're going to set flaps 1, we're going to arm the speed brake, and we're going to set maximum brakes. Now we wait for our ground handler. I could the ground handler's behind the pillar, but I could just see the wave there. Okay, and we've got our clearance for taxi. Okay, taxi light is on, parking brake off. Let's continue. Let's start our taxi. Now, first thing to do on an Airbus, which you might notice if you ever fly on Airbuses, is the brake check. We'll let the aircraft get up to about 10 knots, and then we'll do a brake check just to make sure the brakes are working. Brakes feel good. A plane just landed on the runway. I'm not too sure which airline it is, but it looked like an A320, which are very common in the Philippines and all across Southeast Asia now. Taxiing this aircraft is pretty straightforward, to be honest. There's no issues. Fly-by-wire have done a great job, especially compared to the default aircraft of the A320NEO. Now, it's an awesome option, especially if you don't like to spend money on pay-aware aircraft. And having the A320 included, which is actually, you know, I don't know if in real life, but it's a very relatively simple aircraft to set up. You know, you can see me, I set up very quickly. Just do takeoff check, and then we'll call the cabin. Cabin checks, no blues. Okay, we're now this is going over the what is this going to be the second runway construction, which I like, because even till now, the last time I came to the Philippines, 2019, and then now 2023, the construction is still ongoing for the second runway. I'm not too sure when it's going to be opening or what the schedule is at this current moment in time. COVID really pulled things out of the swing, but aviation, including in Asia, are starting to get back up and running. Right, now that we've done all of our checks in the aircraft, we're now going to ask for our clearance.
Tower Cebu 126 ready for IFR departure runway 22.
Cebu 126 QNH 29.85.202 at 10. Cleared for takeoff runway 22.
Flight attendants, please prepare for takeoff.
Cleared for takeoff.
Okay, we
runway
clear for
22,
takeoff.
Cebu 126.
Parking brake is off. We're clear for takeoff, and just before we take off, we're going to check left. Doesn't look like there's any planes on approach. We're going to check right just in case there's an aircraft crossing or there is a aircraft on the runway. Doesn't look like we do either. So today, and actually, because I haven't been able to figure it out yet, but we are going to do a toga takeoff. So the aircraft will accelerate and rotate very quickly compared to doing a manual flex or man flex takeoff on the throttles. Okay, so we'll just line up, hold the brakes in, increase the throttles. When we release the parking brake, I will set the timer 50%, set timer, and to toga SRS. We don't have a runway light for some reason. I can't get that to work. Maybe something is wrong with this third party where I can already feel the aircraft trying to go up. V1, rotate. And we're climbing out now. Positive rate of climb, gears going up. As I said, it's a very, very quick. And then autopilot's coming on. Gonna hand off.
127.5 for Cebu 5.
Gonna
Juliet
disengage
126.
the speed brakes. And we're gonna set to climb thrust. Climb thrust. And then we're gonna contact Mactan Center.
5 Juliet
Okay, as we pass 200 knots, flaps are going up. And flaps are fully retracted now. And we're on our departure. Now, interestingly, this is why I like Flight Simulator. With Bing Map data enabled, you get a fantastic view. Now, I remember previous flight simulators where a city like here in Cebu, this would just be a bit desolate. It doesn't feel like the real place. And I've been to Cebu many times growing up and even till now. Now, as this is freeware, there is certain scenery that's not available. The city of Cebu doesn't feel as high-rise as before. And this round building down here, this is SM Seaside. There's a bridge, big bridge that goes under the aircraft. Anyway, we need to climb up to 16,000. That's our cruising altitude.
Climb and maintain 16,000 feet, save air 5, Juliet.
And as I mentioned earlier, as I started, I am half Filipino, and my mum is actually from this island that we see on our right side of the aircraft. This is Cebu Island, and my mum is from Cebu Island. Now, as she's from Cebu Island, she owns property, and as we departed, maybe when we were at about 2,000 feet, we were actually climbing over one of my mum's houses, which is in Mactan, and right underneath the approaches and arrivals for runway, well, the approaches into runway 04 and the departures of 22. So often you get to see lots of different types of aircraft, and I can always remember that. There also, as we make this turn, and we're looking directly at the city of Talisay, we'll actually be flying over my mum's second house. It's kind of weird how my mum has two houses and they're both under the sort of flight plans for the airport in Cebu. Growing up and visiting Cebu very often, I got to see the transition of the city. I'm a 90s boy, so I got to see it from the early 2000s until now into the into the 2020s, and it's incredible the transition of this city. But there's also part of it that I don't like, which is how busy it's getting. But I guess that's common in cities when they grow a bit quick. Now, this is one of my favorite views on Flight Simulator. You can see the bustling sprawl of Cebu metro area, because Cebu is made up of many cities, like many places, a bit like in the UK. We have cities that are full of towns, cities, other cities, and villages. And then you can see Mactan here on the right side. Now, there is payware available for Mactan Airport, and it even has the brand new bridge, which isn't on the freeware, and no freeware developer has included it. But there is a payware as well. It only costs about £10, which is very cheap. Conversion into dollars, not too sure, can't remember, but it's very cheap, and I might have to check it out at some point. But for now, freeware. I love it for Flight Simulator, and I look at the terrain details here. So we fly over Cebu. Now, I've done this flight now 6 times, flying between Cebu and Bacolod, and I can tell you the reason why. I'll just show you. Look at this terrain. It's incredible, the detail. And we never used to have this before on the 32-bit Flight Simulator versions, but I'm glad that finally I can enjoy the Philippines. Other Filipinos who are in the Flight Simulator community can also enjoy it, and other Filipinos outside of the Philippines who maybe miss the country. I certainly miss the country, and when I miss the country, I go back on Flight Simulator, and I remember those flights that I fly on in and around the Philippines. I've done many flights over the years, and I've seen the transition of the aviation in the Philippines, because when I was growing up, regional aviation, there was very few airlines actually. I think you had Air Philippines, Asian Spirit, and Philippine Airlines, and Cebu Pacific. And at the time, when I was younger, Cebu Pacific, they were flying DC-9s from the 1960s. Air Philippines was flying 737-200s from the 1960s. And Philippine Airlines was probably the only airline that had a relatively modern fleet. But Philippine Airlines at the time was also not doing any regional flying, really. They were doing domestic flying using the A320, which they acquired in sort of the mid to late 90s. And they had a few wide-body flights as well between Manila, Cebu, Manila, Davao. Davao is the third city, which is out in Mindanao, right in the south of the country, right at the bottom of the country actually, if you ever look on a map, and to General Santos, which is near Davao, not too far away. And like I say, I've had a lot of experience with aviation in the Philippines, and seeing the transition. Cebu Pacific at the time, younger, I said DC-9. I've flown on the DC-9 from Cebu to Manila. And at the time they also had 757-200s, which was very unique in the Philippines. Nobody else had 757s, but they had a handful, which I believe they were using for extra capacity on domestic flights, and also for a good almost all of their international routes at the time. And I remember in the mid-2000s hearing that Cebu Pacific was getting A320s, and I was thinking, wow, modernizing, brand new as well. They were not used ones, and now we're moving into the Neo era. Cebu Pacific has a big order of the 320 Neo and the 321 Neo, and interestingly as well, they fly the wide-body A330 Neo, and they actually had the A330-300 with the Rolls-Royce engines, which they recently have starting to retire in favor of the Neo version. And they're famous, actually. The A330 aircraft that Cebu Pacific fly are famous in the aviation community for having the highest density of seating in the world. And it's hard for me to believe, because I've got many experiences in the A330, flying many airlines. I've never flown on Cebu Pacific's A330, but I have flown on Cathay Pacific's A330s over the years as well. Flown on Qatar Airways A330s as well. I can't think of any other airlines that I've flown on A330s with off the top of my head, but that's my experience with the A330, and not most airlines have about 350 passengers at the most. But Cebu Pacific decided to do something different. Instead of having a 2-4-2 configuration, they have a 3-3-3 configuration. So that means instead of 8 seats across in one row, there are 9 seats. Right, I forgot to set up the our performance pages, but we're now being asked to descend. So let's descend.
5,000 feet, Cebu Flight Juliet 126.
Start our descent, and then I'll do my performance. Now I should have done this, but you know, I like to talk about my aviation experience. Because it's a VNAV, we'll do a higher decision altitude, temperature on the ground, and then 1007. We have quite a low pressure in the Philippines at the moment.
From the flight deck, ladies and gentlemen, as you may have noticed, we have begun our initial descent down to our destination. Now would be a good time to wrap up any business you need to take care of as we prepare for off-road.
Now all my lights are still on, and I didn't do the seatbelt sign, but it's fine. This is not the point of this video today. The point of this video is just to showcase Flight Simulator. One of the most amazing things that I especially discovered the most recent time I was in the Philippines is Bacolod. Now my wife is from this island here, Negros, and I actually have a sister-in-law who's also from this island. Now they're very farming, and they do their sugarcane over there. I'm going to switch back to the passenger view, and I'm going to show you what I mean. Like I was amazed by the topography of the island of Negros here. You can see that we have some mountain ranges here, but most of the land is very flat, which explains why they're quite big with agriculture, especially in this part of the island. Lots of sugarcane and rice plantations. And they even have like what I'd consider highlands, and my wife always says, you know, The difference between Negros and Cebu with the mountains is that at night time in Negros there are no lights in the mountains. People don't live in the mountains really. There's not some of the places are a little bit too much, I guess. But in Cebu, most of the mountains that you see there are lights up in the mountains, you know, and they are, you know, and you can see that people are living in there, or that there are roads. Anyway, we got some new instructions,
Descend and maintain 9,000
and we'll bring
feet.
our speed down to 250. You want 9,000, which I believe is the altitude expected at the next waypoint at Carditz. I'll just pull out the speed brake so we can get our speed down to 250, especially now that we're approaching 10,000 feet with the speed restrictions available. In fact, we'll bring our speed down to 240. Now we're on the Carditz approach, which I already preloaded on the ground at Cebu. This is one of the things I love about doing short flights as well. You can preload the entire flight from the departure to the arrival. Now it looks like today pretty straightforward, very few clouds in the air, and the visibility is very high. I'll turn the instrument landing assistance on the primary display just now, and with the RNAV approaches, actually most airports in the Philippines of late have been using RNAV approaches instead of ILSs, because RNAV uses GPS. It's much cheaper to implement than ILS. ILS, you need physical antennas on the ground to guide the aircraft in. In fact, Cebu, the ILS for runway 04 was knocked out because of the Korean airplane, I believe if you heard last year, a Korean Air A330 overran the runway during stormy weather after I believe its third attempt to land in Cebu, and knocked out the antennas. 5,000. Okay.
Descend and maintain 5,000 feet. Expect RNAV runway 21 approach via Tabi transition. Cleared to Tabi Cebu 5 Juliet 1.
So it's holding 9,000 because I believe at Carditz we're supposed to be at 9,000, but Tabi 5,000, and it should start descending. There we go. Should start descending in a second. There we go. Okay, now we have to contact the approach controllers. Thank you very much.
Bacolod approach Cebu 5 Juliet 126 is at 8,800 feet, descending 5,000 feet.
Cebu 5 Juliet 126 Bacolod approach QNH
2985, okay.
Tabi as planned.
Right. We're nearly at Tabi waypoint. Airport is roughly at our 11 o'clock position. I can actually see the runway just over there. So here's what we're going to do.
Cebu 5 Juliet 126 descend and maintain 1,800 feet.
Okay, 1,800 feet. Descend and maintain 1,800. That should bring us down to our final, where we can then disengage the autopilot and fly manually. Okay, let's set up for the approach. Okay, we'll extend the speed brakes. We're a bit high at the moment, but we'll get the aircraft slowed down. With the flaps down, we should be able to recover this slightly higher approach. As I said to you, we should have been at Toby at 5,000. So we're below the safe flap speed for flaps 1, but we'll engage flaps 1 once we hit 200 knots. Speed is on the left side. We're at about 205. Runway's in sight. Flaps 1. We'll continue to decelerate and we'll actually do vertical speed because we're flying very high above our approach. Flaps 2. Runway's in sight. Maintaining speed, which is good. We're just going to bring the aircraft down because we should be at 5,000 feet at Toby, which we didn't. 1,800 feet at Victor Bravo 21 Alpha. But we're a little bit high, but that's not a problem because I can maintain the speed here with the speed breakout.
CEB-5 Juliet 126, you are 13 miles northeast of Bacolod. Contact Bacolod Tower on 118.8 when inbound on the approach.
Tower on 118.8 CEB-5 Juliet 126. Bacolod Tower CEB-5 Juliet 12612 miles northeast inbound RNAV runway 21 approach.
Oh, what happened to our communication with Bacolod Tower? Something's happened because there we go.
Cleared RNAV runway 21 approach CEB-5 Juliet 126.
We're a bit high still, but that's not a problem. We're not too far off where we should be. .3,000 feet. So we're on track. We're a little high, but it's not a problem. Gear's coming down. Flaps are coming down as well.
Flight attendants, please prepare for landing.
And then we'll do medium brake so we can get off at, I believe it's taxiway Bravo. Gear is down, 3 greens.
2,500.
Gonna disengage the autopilot, set full flaps. At the same time, I'm gonna arm the speed brakes because we don't need them anymore. We're at full flaps as well. Just keep the aircraft on the descent. Hold the pattern. The winds are quite strong here, 25 knots as you can see on that display on the ND. We're a little high, but it's not a problem. Pappy lights are coming in sight, which are the lights on the left side of the runway. Set for a go around at 3,000 feet, just in case we need to go around. There's no traffic in the area, so we should be okay. Okay, we got our clearance to land.
Cleared to land runway 21 CEB-5 Juliet 126.
We're at our approach speed. We just do that, get rid of all the blue on our display on the right. If I go quiet, it's because I'm sort of concentrating Our approach is not too bad. We're a bit low, but it's not a problem. I can recover that. We just keep an eye on the pappies, and we keep an eye on our altitude and speed. That's the most important. Luckily the gusts here are not too bad, and the wind is pretty much straight down the runway. There's a few gusts slightly to coming from the right side across to the left side, but that's not a big deal. It's not causing too many issues. Able to keep center line without using too much rudder. A little bit of aileron movement. We're on a good path.
Hundred above. Minimum.
Continue. Good approach.
$200. 100.
I'm gonna flare the
50,
aircraft.
40, 30, 20, 10, 5.
Good landing. Reversers are green. Deceleration. Manual braking, and reversers are out. Starting the APU, landing lights can come off. Taxi lights come on. TCAS can come off. Flaps going up. Speed brakes are off. Strobe lights can come off too.
Going to 118.8 Cebu 5, Juliet 126. Bacolod ground Cebu 5, Juliet 126 taxi to the gate. Taxiing to gate for using taxiway.
The requested
Bravo
position
Cebu
is already
5,
assigned
Juliet
to another
126.
aircraft.
So I've just set up GSX very quickly so we can have a ground handler, and everything is ready. I can see them already. We'll turn off the taxi light. APU is already on. Then we'll I can see the handler. Just turn into number 4. I like how quickly you can turn on this flight simulator, especially compared to Flight Simulator X. But here we are, Bacolod Silai International Airport. It's not really an international airport though, but just watch the ground handler. Slightly to the right. Oops. A little bit further. And stop. Parking brake. Why did you go into reverse? And then engines can come off. Oh gosh, continue. And then we'll request deboarding. And we'll turn off the seatbelt sign. Okay, thank you for flying with us today. Like I say, this has been Cebu Pacific's flight 26.
Passengers deboarding starting.
Oh, this has been flight 126 from Cebu to Bacolod. As you can see behind me, Bacolod Silay Airport. And now we're starting our deboarding process. Bags are coming out too. Perfect. And thank you so much for joining me. It's been a long absence since I've been here on YouTube, but I'm glad that I'm starting up again and giving you fantastic, hopefully not so regular, but I will try to make it as best as I can. And I'll be doing lots and lots of flights around the Philippines, I hope, with this, the A320NEO and the ATR aircraft, which are very prevalent nowadays in the Philippines, and tell you some more stories in which I can tell you with our flights. Thank you for joining me. Hope you enjoyed. Bye bye.
Do you want to deboard crew?